this is Peter Bossy. He has some special knowledge in a couple of the areas he's willing to share. I'll just tell I'll give a quick kind of legalistic rundown. And I said this in the earlier talk, is that any kind of organization that's going to do anything official has to have a name that goes on the official paperwork and all that. So, for example, a corporation like General Motors isn't a man. It's a fictitious. They call it a legal fiction, and sometimes they call it a sue or be sued entity. So that means, like, if it ever gets to a case where it's Jack Shimmick versus General Motors, you have to have a name to put on there, and that's so in the way the legal system has developed, whether it's evolved from common law or statute law, everything's got, they're really big on everything having an identity, and if there has to be a lawsuit, something has to have a name. So a cooperative, a lot of people say, well, gee, what's a cooperative, like it's some mysterious thing, but it's not. There's some big cooperative enterprises. In Vermont, the Cabot Creamery, they sell cheese and butter and all that. That's a cooperative. That's a producer cooperative where a bunch of different farmers, they said, geez, we want to make this creamery. It's going to cost $1 million for all the equipment and buildings. How about if we all pitch in $10,000? They form the legal fiction, which is an entity called Cabot Creamery. They all are members and they all pay in. And that's all that is a cooperative. And then they hire a guy as a marketer to go around to the grocery stores and say, hey, would you put our butter and cheese on your shelves? So it's run like a business, but it's owned by all the producers. A consumer cooperative is you want to buy health food, so you join a health food co-op. There's a big warehouse that has all the packaged goods, the cereals and milk and things like that. You all join in together and say, okay, we're going to meet on the third Thursday of every month and sit down and write out our order, and we're going to send it into the warehouse. A week later, a truck comes, delivers all the food. So that's a consumer cooperative. I've been in several cooperatives. They didn't have a building, they didn't have staff or anything. They met at the town hall. The truck came and delivered it there. They parked in the town hall parking lot. They divided up the stuff.
Awesome.
Everybody did like a little bit of a volunteer task, and so that's a consumer cooperative. But now here's some other examples. REI, the outfitter, they're a cooperative. And in the east, there's Eastern Mountain Sports. I guess REI is more Western, but they have 5 million members. They have a website, a catalog, a staff, and all that stuff. But they're actually owned by the members. So you join and you can order your supplies there.
Just a small thing. In Argentina, I believe there's also a workers' co-op that the government tried to shut down, but the community nearby backed them up.
Yeah.
They're still going strong.
So yeah, there's workers cooperatives. There's a guy that I knew formed a carpenters cooperative, and I do some work where I need tools and all that, and I don't always have the right tool, but my buddy does, and he says, hey, can I borrow your so-and-so for the day? And so we act as a cooperative, but without having a name or an official entity or anything. So when you think of it, a cooperative is people that just agree to cooperate, operate together is all it means. In the law, they have an organized format for it, but you can even do it without using the legal organized format. You can do it your own way. I mean, we do have the freedom to do a bunch of things our own way. There's in New Hampshire, there's a big electrical cooperative, so you can buy your power from a co-op. It's called New England Electric Cooperative. It has 100,000 members that buy electric power that way.
Cool.
Now that one's a mixed entity in that it was started during the 30s because of the Rural Electrification Act, and it was part of the New Deal, and they wanted to send electricity out to all the farms and all that. And so they formed cooperatives to do that. And so to do that, they had a statutory legal structure. And in New Hampshire, there's a certain section of the corporate statutes that tells how you can do a co-op that is actually a corporation.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'll just give my concept of what would be the coolest co-op for us here in New Hampshire, and then we'll move on to some of the other alternate organizations.
Coffee shop.
My idea was to call it the Brave New Co-op, just because I thought that was a cool name, And in this, it would be a consumer cooperative, like to buy health food, but you could always negotiate to buy other things. And basically, what you want to do is have enough members so that you're buying in large enough quantity that you get the lowest price. So if you're going to buy something, I said, well, we need to have enough members that we would buy in a pallet load of everything, And everybody up here says, oh, we should be buying pallet loads of ammunition,
And it gets sort of...
Yeah, well, the gun stores already get it delivered to them by the pallet load and all that. But ammunition and guns are all such a tightly regulated area that it's a lot harder to do. But the Brave New Co-op idea would be also, it could be, you can have a combination of consumer and producer cooperative. And so a lot of people have talked about this. We need to build our little alternative marketplaces to get buyers and sellers together. So if there's a carpenter and then somebody needs home repairs and they're both members of the Brave New Co-op, you know, they sort of list what they have and what they need and match them up. There have been a couple of attempts at that here so far. We just need the right combination of legal structure and technical know-how. And when I say legal structure, I mean agreement structure. Like, it doesn't have to be a corporation, but what is the agreement?
Private contractual agreement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And because everything that you read in all the constitutions say nothing in here is to abrogate the rights of contract. So we're in because we can always still agree with each other. That's all the contract is. One other idea I had was I wanted to have a shop for my business. Right now I'm too small, you know. I couldn't quite afford a shop, so I said, how about we get several people together that can't quite afford a shop and rent one together? So I call that an industrial cooperative. And I found this guy who had a snowmobile repair shop, and he'd moved into bigger quarters. And so I said I wanted his shop. It was a good location, had good facilities. So I wrote a proposal for that. If anybody wants the proposal, I can send you a copy of it. It's a Google document. I'll share it with you online.
Jack, are you familiar with what's called the maker community?
Yeah.
Okay, because they have shops like that are cooperatively, they pitch in, everybody pitches in for the rent and for making space and tools. They might, because the model's already there and it's very successful, it might be fun to visit a couple of them and talk to some people.
There's a maker fair September 25th in New York, so I plan to go to that.
Okay, good.
I don't know what they are.
Okay, we'll get into that later. Off.
Sorry, that was a sidebar.
There's artists cooperatives. I went to a meeting of the Burning Man community. There's a Burning Man community that's Vermont and New Hampshire, and they call it Yankee Burners. And so they have meet and greets and all that.
Cool.
So a bunch of them are artists, and they want to be an artist cooperative. And basically, this idea is the same with just another variation. They want to rent some old factory space and subdivide it so everybody's got a studio there. So co-ops they're like a proven model, actually. They're proven, except they are actually difficult. Like, the hardest part of all this stuff isn't the technical stuff, it's the personalities and what everybody's expectations are. Oh, it's grueling sometimes. If you've ever had a roommate, that's just a co-op of two people sharing an apartment.
And see how wrong that can go.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what you were talking about legally in terms of having somebody who's an expert in agreements.
Right.
Keeping it really clear helps.
Yeah. So I think the initial agreement and your communication about that agreement, making sure everybody understands it, is really key. And so you shouldn't just let somebody into the co-op. You should have like a initial period of getting to know each other and then make a formal invitation. So I'm going to turn this over to Peter. I was saying that you have to have to own anything, you have to register a name and all that. I'll let him take a comment.
So I started with, it's a little bit of background just so you know where I'm coming from. I came to Porcfest last year, and I love this environment, right? And I love that we're all here together and that we can do so much together and we can talk. And if the Free State Project actually takes off and 20,000 people all start moving into New Hampshire, my question was, well, where are all the other people? Let's move, so that we have neighbors and we have our friends nearby. And I am very much an individualist, and I'm not a fan of collective, we say this, because when you say we, you're identifying someone, and so I want to be able to be very clear. It's like, I am this, or when I say we, it's like Jack and I are, and then I can speak for both of us or something. And so, even though I'm an individualist, I still am very cooperative, and I think that one of the ways that we'll succeed is if we do things together, and that if we just strike out on our own and do, I'm going to go out in the woods and I'm going to live in my cabin. Well, I'm not going to do that whole Unabomber thing. That's not what I'm into. I'm very much a people person. I want to be with people. And so, and since we, together, all of us, not necessarily have a lot of money, the idea came up, it's like, well, let's just buy, 100 acres together. And it's like, okay, there's the theoretical idea, let's buy 100 acres. There's the theoretical, like that would be a great idea, let's buy a whole bunch of land together and let's split it, but there's the part of it that is the very practical part of, okay, that sounds like a great idea, but I've had roommates and I know that there are issues with, well, let's just buy something together. And so what legal structures are in place, or what have people already done? Because I'm not interested in trying to come up with that by myself. So what have people done in the past and what has been successful? And so I did a lot of research around housing cooperatives, and my focus is more of the, yes, there are a lot of like communes and things like that. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in income sharing at all. I want to have my own house. I want to have my own kitchen, my own living room, my own bedrooms. I don't want to share that, but I am willing to help other people get to that point where they have their own homes and stuff like that. And one of the ideas that I came across was the co-housing model. And co-housing came out of Denmark in the 60s probably, and came to the US in the mid-80s. And the idea is that a group of people form and they buy a piece of land together, and they live on the land together, and it's kind of like a condominium style thing, but it was an intentional coming together around some idea. And I don't think that a voluntarist or voluntary community style model has been done in that type of community. There has been the, well, I'm screw you guys, I'm going to do whatever I want, I'm an anarchist, yay! And that's not what that's not what will work. You need to have a certain set of agreements amongst each other, and they should be voluntary agreements. I don't believe in force or coercion against anyone. And so how can you get it so that, let's start with, let's be considerate and respectful. Let's start with that. If you can't agree with that, that's okay. I'm not going to force you to be considerate and respectful. I'm just not going to buy land with you. And then we'll start with that as like a base and say, what kinds of agreements could we come together with so that we don't end up, this thing doesn't start to implode. And we can come up with any number of agreements. I mean, I agree not to strike Jack. Okay, that works, right?
I'll do the same.
Let's work for that. Okay. And then there's the, well, what happens if? Okay, you've got some what happens if. Let's throw all of our what happens if into the pile. And okay, we've got a workshop and we've got power tools in there. What happens if a child goes into the workshop and hurts themselves? Okay, what do you think is reasonable? Let's come up with some sort of agreement here before this workshop exists to govern this particular resource. And so the co-housing model is one idea. Another model that works is a community land trust. And there's a lot of information about community land trusts online. I think smallisbeautiful.org is where you would, E.F. Schumacher Society. And they talk about how to, a trust will be the legal fiction in this case. So you would have a document written up that defines a trust. And you can have any attorney in New Hampshire write up this trust document. And once it's notarized, the trust exists. And then that trust does not need to be registered with the state. It's a legal entity that can purchase land and own land. And there's two sets of individuals that belong to that trust or are part of that trust. There's the trustees and then the beneficiaries. And the beneficiaries get enjoyment of whatever that trust owns. And you can change the trustees or the beneficiaries at any time with everyone's agreement written out and notarized. And the trustees and the beneficiaries could be the same people. But the trustees can act on behalf of the trust, purchase more land, sell the land, mortgage it, whatever. And the beneficiaries enjoy the land.